So in anticipation of Muppets Most Wanted, which comes out tomorrow from the time I'm saying this, but by the time I upload this, it'll probably be out already. But I'll only be able to watch that movie next Tuesday. So from today until next Tuesday, I'm going to be reviewing old Muppets movies. So that starts us off with 1979's The Muppet Movie. So the Muppet Movie is directed by James Frawley and written by Jack Burns and Jerry Gill. Now this also stars, of course, the Muppets. And at this point in time, the major Muppets were being puppeteered by Frank Oz and Jim Henson. And of course, there are lots of other puppeteers, like way too many to mention, but just take note that they all helped to make this movie come to life. And among the human actors, amidst all these special cameos, the guy who gets the most screen time is Charles Durning, who plays Doc Hopper, who is the antagonist of the film. Now, the Muppet Movie is kind of like an origin story for like how the Muppets became, famous, how they all met and stuff. And this pretty much follows Kermit the Frog from his home, the swamp, and how he travels, or at least wants to get to Hollywood to become all rich and famous and inspire millions of people. And along the way, he meets all our other Muppet friends, and at the same time, he is being pursued by Doc Hopper, who wants to get Kermit and use him as like a mascot for his like Frog Legs restaurant empire. Now, I was never like a huge fan of the Muppets, although I do remember watching and enjoying them a lot. Like I usually got them confused with Sesame Street, who, it's look, I was a kid. It's pretty easy to confuse them, okay? But since I don't really remember the Muppets that well, and since I didn't get to watch the 2011 one, this is kind of like a reintroduction for me to the Muppets. And again, I confused it with Sesame Street. So going into this, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be like a kids movie. And The Muppets isn't necessarily a kids movie. It's very light. And, it is mostly a sketch comedy kind of thing with really lighthearted humor. And you know what? This movie turned out to be great. Like, I love this movie. It really has that old school movie magic that you rarely see nowadays. And it's just so pure and so fun. First of all, when you talk about the Muppets, you gotta talk about the puppetry, like all these practical effects. And you know what? The puppetry is just amazing, really, just the way they do this. Because you can tell, like, it's not just one hand inside one puppet. It's really like the arms move, the mouth moves, legs move, and stuff. And really, it's just such a credit to the talents of Jim Henson, Frank Oz, and all the other puppeteers that they are able to really make these puppets feel like characters. It takes a lot of skill to be able to, show the audience something that's obviously not real and make them care for it like it's a real character. Given that the Muppets really does have like sketch comedy roots, the sets are very simple, the production design is very simple, but I really, really like how the puppeteers and the filmmakers really did not let this stop them from, showing the Muppets in like full body form. And I can tell that it was hard for them because it's easier when you just see them from the waist up and you can kind of hide under the screen. But here they really wanted to tell a good story, and like there's so much dedication you can see put into just making the Muppets seem like actual characters on screen. Really, it's really, really effective because you know what, this movie almost made me cry. And the reason why this movie almost made me cry is like my absolute favorite thing about this movie is the music. The music here is incredible. It's so good. Like I can't believe it. The soundtrack, every single song is fantastic. Everything is written so well, everything is composed so well. There's not one weak song here. Just like in my review for Mary Poppins, there's something about music that's written for like a slightly younger audience. It's more pure. And for some reason the melodies are just better. They're not weighed down by political statements or whatever. I don't know. What I love so much about the songs is that they're all meant to be standalone songs. They're not really meant to push story forward. They're not meant to narrate anything. But I don't know. I just like the fact that you can take these songs as they are, and they they work. It just makes it seem more universal, and it just feels very timeless. Again, I just gotta read through this entire soundtrack list here in Wikipedia because every single song is fantastic. So I'm gonna skip the first song as I get to that later, but number one, Moving Right Along, is a fantastic song. Never Before, Never Again by Miss Piggy. It's fun. It's my least favorite, but it's still good. I hope that Something Better Comes Along is really, really great between Kermit and Ralph the dog. Can you picture that by Dr. Tate and the Electric Mayhem? Rock On Animal. I'm Going to Go Back There Someday by Gonzo. And of course, I have to mention the song in this movie is Rainbow Connection. Rainbow Connection almost made me cry, and it is extremely well written, it's extremely well composed, and it just stands for so much, you know. I heard that this did not win the Oscar back in 1979. People are angry about it, and you know what? Like this, who cares about the Oscar? Because this song has remained relevant till today. It is fantastic. If you have not listened to it yet, please do listen to it. It is life changing. Moving on, though, again, in terms of writing, all the characters are very relevant, or if they're not like explicitly relevant, they're very memorable. Again, this is kind of like not necessarily a kids movie, but for a younger audience, and it doesn't really matter if certain characters don't like help with the problem or like they don't help move the plot along because all you need for them is like sort of like personality. And if some of these characters can't really deliver in terms of like they're not the stars of a certain scene, the most important ones are given songs, and those songs really do make them memorable. It really is just nice to have all of them here together. You know, the Muppets are not the Muppets if they're not a big gang. And I surprisingly like the antagonist, Doc Hopper. Like, he is cookie cutter kids style villain. You know, he's not necessarily threatening himself, but I really liked how they handled him. I liked how he kind of gets more and more sinister as it goes on, and I like how I can't spoil it, but at the end they make him do something or say something, and I just thought like that's a villain. Also, there's tons of cameos here, and you know I obviously wasn't alive at this time, so I'm most of the cameos like I really missed them, but you know it's just fun to see like all these faces that I know in my mind I was thinking I should know this person, but and I guess I'm just enjoying the fact that they have cameos. And then we get to the Muppet brand of humor. Now, this is kind of where it might lose some people because if you don't buy the Muppet brand of humor, you're not gonna buy any of these movies. And the Muppet brand of humor is number one. It's very meta. There's lots of breaking the fourth wall here. Lots of lots of recognizing that they're in a movie. It's also very punny. By punny, I mean they use lots of puns. But for some reason, the very fact they're puppets and stuff, like it really makes these puns like work. Like for other movies that are more serious, puns just are just like cheap. But here, I don't know, it's very endearing. And the Muppet brand of humor is also very surreal. Like lots of weird, random things happen. That's my favorite part because you know, you don't need a reason for that. I mean, there are Muppets walking around. Why would you question the surreal humor? In terms of directing, I heard that James Frawley actually wasn't that happy directing this, and I can kind of understand because he was gotten from outside the Muppet world, so I guess he wasn't like he was more used to directing actual human beings, and I can see how that might frustrate some people. But he doesn't need to be unhappy because he really did direct this movie well, I think, because it takes a certain level of skill again to make these characters likable, to make them seem real. Or maybe that's because the source material, I guess people are just familiar with the Muppets, that's why they're lovable, but regardless, I think James Frawley did a good job. I do have a couple of problems with the movie though. For one, I feel like some parts are a bit too long. There are certain scenes where they're just putting in cameos, and I thought, you know, there's a story going on, don't compromise that just to have some cameos. In particular, I'm not really a huge fan of Miss Piggy. I've never been a huge fan of Miss Piggy, but I guess that's because she is like a flawed character. But the moment when she sees Kermit, then she falls in love and stuff, and she starts singing a song. First, it's funny because it's so sudden, but I think they drag that on a bit too long. So, and also like in true fashion for these, you know, kind of kiddie movies, the way the conflict is resolved, or the way the goal is obtained, is really, really rushed. Like they just kind of, oh, okay, it's over, no, don't worry about anything. So I don't know. I kind of wish they wrapped it up better. However, aside from that, the Muppet movie is great, man. Like this is really a great late '70s movie. And if this doesn't make you a fan of the Muppets, then nothing will, because this is everything the Muppets has to offer, and it is all fantastic to me. And at the very least, you gotta check this out for the music, because the music is, again, it's spectacular. At least listen to Rainbow Connection once. If you don't like that, I have no idea. Anyway, so Muppet Week will continue as this week goes on. Have you guys seen the Muppet movie though? If you have, what did you think of it? Whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.